right, welcome everyone to episode 8 of Heavily Invested. Now, in past shows, I've had just friends on the show, but today I am happy to announce we have some family on the show. Today's guest is my Aunt Kathy. And Kathy, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks, you betcha.
Yeah. Now, as I've said in past episodes, the goal here is always to have a chance for the person being interviewed to share their experience of gaming. And I'm excited, Aunt Kathy, because you have more experience with gaming and the evolution of games than anyone else that I've interviewed so far. And I consider myself a gaming connoisseur, but I wasn't there for really the creation of most of my games. I think for me, the first console I really saw was made when I was playing was GameCube. And so I'm excited to have the chance to pick your brain on what it's been like to see that evolution, and then also as a parent, a parent of my cousins, I'm excited to talk to you about a world that is dominated by technology and kind of how that's been as a parent. But before we get into any of that heavy stuff, we'll just start off with a nice, easy question. What is... Okay, in the past, I've asked first game you played, but usually this question is kind of twofold now. So the first game you remember playing, and then the first game you remember really putting time into.
Those are really good questions, and I had to really stop and think for a moment as you were asking. Very two different things.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna date myself now. So back in the 70s is when the first video game console, at least that I know of, actually came out.
I love it.
And it was the Magnavox Odyssey. I had to do a little research to remember what it was called. And I've got very faint memories. Your mom has all the memory cells. I don't. I have very faint memories of it. I definitely remember, and I know everybody is familiar with Pong, but this is actually even before Pong, because you put these static pieces of transparency on your TV screen, and the very first version of Pong, I think they called it table tennis, had actually the court on this wrap that you put on your TV. Then you just had a dot on each side and the dot going in between, and this vertical bar is all the console could really do. That was Pong.
That's crazy.
Besides that game, there was one, and this is the strangest thing. I was on a trip one time, and I went to a museum because they were having an exhibit of old video games. This was probably 15 years ago now, but
okay.
When I was there, I saw this old technology that I played with, and they had the game that stirred up memories on. It was called Haunted House. So same box.
Okay.
It had again one of these static things that you put on the TV screen. It was a purple haunted house, and I have memories of that. Just again, this box. All it could do was, I researched. All it could do was 3 dots and a line. So 2 controllers. Each controller controlled a dot. And you set the line based on whatever game you were playing, based on the transparency you put up. And then the computer also had a dot. And the game, basically, you had to wander around with your dot through this haunted house. So there were areas that your dot would appear as you wandered around, find clues before the ghost got you. So that is my earliest memory of game, and to see where things are today.
Yeah, that's so crazy. I love that because my mom has in the past for sure talked about Pong, and she would always talk about the static cling, and it was such an interesting concept for me to and from my point of view, it's crazy to think about a time in which graphics weren't contained in the computer, but what a creative solution to an issue of graphics. We can't. Someone had to sit through and think, okay, we can't put art in the design, so let's do an external art piece in which you interact with. That's pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah, and with such limited things that you could interact with, 3 dots and a vertical line.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I mean that's the start, and we've talked in the past about Zork.
Sure.
Talking about
Yeah.
not having graphics. So Zork, I don't even know when Zork came about and all of that, but Zork was definitely another thing. I guess that was college. So
Okay.
it was probably in the 80s, I'm guessing,
Sure.
Zork came out. Then more in between there was the whole Atari thing. These were Pong, Space Invaders, Donkey Kong. They were all just games that also you would get to play in the arcade, the historical ones. For me, I went off to college, studied IT, and not really for game designer because that didn't really exist back then, but
Sure.
got out of the computer game playing until probably in the 2000s. Kids and these gaming systems really were out and about and fascinating again, and brings me to today on, okay, we can question what game have I really invested my time into, and I'd say the Super Mario Galaxy.
Okay.
The
Okay.
first game that really made me sit down and, yeah, I got to conquer this thing. And I'm sure you've played it. You got Galaxy and
Yeah.
Galaxy 2. In Galaxy were levels that just crazy to try and really frustrated me.
Yeah.
And I had to have probably my daughters help me out at some point in time to get through with the ones where you had to collect all the coins and the floor underneath of you is disappearing. And
Yeah.
I've improved in Galaxy 2 where if you can't do it after so many tries, they help you. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think I know the exact level you're talking about because I think we've talked about it in the past. It's like the one where like it's like 8-bit Mario, right? Is like the map, I think. And like as you step on certain tiles, certain things happen, like they either flip or they disappear.
or they disappear. And once they
Yeah.
disappear, they're gone. And
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I know the exact level you're talking about.
And you have Mario shadows chasing you on some
Yeah.
of them. And
Yep.
yes.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned the level where like in Galaxy 2 where they help you because the most recent Mario is Super Mario Odyssey for the Switch, and Ben had bought it. For those who don't know, Ben's my younger brother, and he had bought it. And Ben is not the best at video games, but he enjoys playing them. And he came up to me one day and he's like, "I beat Mario Odyssey." And I was like, "You beat the whole game?" And he's like, "Yeah, I beat the whole game." And I was like, "Wow, Ben, like that's amazing. Like that's so great." Like, because I knew there was some harder boss battles and some harder levels in there. And then my mom came up to me and she was like, "Oh, well, there's a thing in there where they can play the level for you." And I was like, "What?" And so he just pretty much watched the computer play the game for him.
I feel that. I feel that. I watched a couple levels on Mario
Yeah.
Galaxy 2, because, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's surprising. There are some hard Mario levels for sure. I think about I think it was Super Mario World for the Wii U. I think is what it was for. Um, but I remember there was like if you collected a whole bunch of stuff and like you accomplish all these things, there's a secret level, and I spent all this time on this secret level, and it was crazy hard. But it was one of those weird things where there's a lot of pride I had attached to it, and I'm not sure why.
Yep. I get that, to
Yeah.
be able to finish and get to that very end and say, yes, I did every level, including the extras. And
Right, right. Yeah, there's a guy online. His name is The Completionist, and he has a whole YouTube channel where all he does is 100% video
oh,
games.
man.
Yeah, but it's cool because he does a review, and so he'll talk about like how many hours it took him to complete the whole game, on like a scale of difficulty that he set, like how hard it was, what the like reward was for like 100%ing it, because most games have like some kind of
Yeah.
like thank you or something if you 100% the game. So I end up watching his videos a lot because it's cool to see games that I
Yeah.
played where maybe I didn't 100% them, but it's cool to see somebody else put all that time
Look
in there.
that up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The Completionist, he's really cool. Um, so I'm interested in what got you into video games. Was it just like the thing at the time, or was there a reason you liked them?
So interesting. If I think about that, think back. I'm a game player. I think
Sure.
I've always been. So I have recollections, and again, not major recollections because my memory is pretty bad, of getting a doll one year would play tic-tac-toe with me, where hand would and hit a button and a ball would pop into the tic-tac-toe board, so I actually could have a competitor to
Oh
play
wow.
tic-tac-toe with. Well, even at an early age, I loved playing games. I think it's just that, and I'm trying to think back. I don't know why. My parents just always had the latest and greatest things. You know, we had a
Yeah,
TV when they came out, and the video games, and we had a
sure.
pool table, and would have thought where things started with the Magnavox and the Atari. And
Right.
man, I really wish I still had those units. You know,
Right.
because be worth a
Right.
lot of money. They'd be cool.
Yeah.
They were just in passing and move on to the next latest thing.
Yeah.
So I just love a good challenge, and even today, you know, I just on challenges,
Yeah.
games, and
I think the same thing sometimes too, where like in today's day and age, with the whole quarantine and things being as crazy as they are, when the new Animal Crossing game came out, me and Glenn bought the hard copy, and we got the hard copy like I think it was like the day before everything shut down.
oh,
And I thought to Glenn, I was like, Glenn, should I buy a second copy of this? Because in like 60 years, are we going to be like, oh man, I wish we still had our Animal Crossing? Like, because it's like nobody thinks that way. Nobody's
yeah,
like,
exactly.
if I buy this now and hold on to it for 40 years, it'll be whatever. You know, like nobody thinks that way.
Yep.
Um, and it is even now. It's crazy to think because like back then it was just as much a passing thing as it is now. Like people will play the new console, whatever it is, for 2-3 years, and then all they want is the next console. That's all they're talking about. Is like, when's the next one coming out? When's the newest whatever coming out? And so it's interesting to hear that, you know, like us being a fast-paced culture isn't necessarily a new thing.
Yep.
Um,
That's
and
exactly right.
yeah, yeah. And I remember too, my mom has told me a story where Pop Up had bought her for either Christmas or her birthday this like portable TV where you can like crank it and it has like a radio antenna or whatever, and it's like this really cool thing, and she's like, whoa, this is crazy, like what a great gift. But Papa bought it because you guys were going camping and he wanted to watch the hockey game.
Yeah, yep. That's pop out.
And so when she had told me that, I was laughing so hard. But yeah, I remember she had said similar things about Pop Up, always buying a new camera or like whatever the
Yep.
newest like thing was.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. He would go out, and even with cars, I'm sure she
Yeah.
mentioned that he would go out. Yeah, we're just gonna go out looking at cars, and they'd come home with a new one. Yeah.
That's so funny. I love that. But yes, I love that. Yeah, Mario Galaxy is a great game. My friend actually, who was on the show, David, a couple episodes ago, he had said that Super Mario Galaxy had the best music. He said that he really liked the music in that game.
Yeah, that's nice. You know what? And it's funny because we have a book. My daughter Hannah likes to play the piano some, and she'll
Yeah.
sit down, and we have a Mario music. You know, the different little tunes that come in
Yeah.
to place. It's kind of fun.
That's awesome. I love that. I have in the past asked people what their favorite video game has been, and most people always respond with, "That's a really hard question," which is true. So I've altered it a little bit to be a Mount Rushmore of games. So I'm asking for what your top 4 games would be. They don't have to necessarily be in an order, but if you had to pick 4, which would you say have been your favorite?
So I definitely have some top favorites, and you already heard about the Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. I'm
Sure.
going to put them together, so I've got more games I can put in there.
I love it.
And then I'm going to group all my older games together because, the old times, Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr.
Okay.
Do you include like arcade games when you're thinking about video games?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
mean,
ever?
I like, and here's my hot take on that. I think without arcade games, I don't think we'd have video games.
Yeah, true.
Because it was like the explosion of arcades is what showed companies and even individuals that like these things are popular. Like people want to play these things. And so without that kind of popularity, that boom, I don't think there would have been as many companies saying, how can we put this in the home? Because I don't know if you know this, but Nintendo was actually a card company. Like they made cards for like trading card games or like board games. Like that's all they did. It was they made cards.
Oh, wow.
And then they saw how popular in Japan arcades were, and they're like, we should move in this direction. Like we should move in this gaming direction, and that's how the Nintendo came out. And so yeah, I would count arcade games in the Mount Rushmore of games for sure.
So in my older games collection, got a
Yeah.
lot of years under me. I get a couple more than 4. There, and I don't even know the name of it, although it may be called Marble Mania or something. But there is this arcade game. There's no way they could reproduce this as a game. Where you had to get this marble through different obstacles and such. You didn't have a joystick or a knob or anything. You had a ball that you had to use both hands to
Oh,
roll it. So
okay.
it sits in place, but you're rolling the ball down, left, up, and you're trying to avoid things, and you're making this marble move. And
Oh,
I don't know
wow.
what I don't know what it is. It was about that, but it was one of my favorite arcade games. And when I would go to places like somewhere where they had a bunch of old arcade games, different floors. Oh, it was down at Disney actually. The Disney Quest.
Oh, yeah, Disney Quest.
They,
Yeah.
and they had the different levels, and I found that game there, and I was so excited. So, actually, they had it at the pinball parlor that
Yeah.
Ben had his parties at, but it wasn't working all the time. It would work sometimes.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention it. As soon as you had said the ball, I thought of Ben's party because I remembered playing a game just like that.
That
But
was
yeah,
that was it.
same thing. I think I played like the first level and then it stopped working.
Yes.
um, but and me and Ben, we were able to go to Disney Quest. I think it was like the last year they had it opened, um, and we loved it. Like such a cool
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, it was.
Because they even like that's something I don't know if I had a chance to tell you, but in Japan, arcades are still really big and really popular, and they have these. Essentially, they're Disney quests, but they're called Round One, and they're these like 6-story buildings, and they have everything from bowling to arcade games to roller skate rinks to karaoke. Like it's every floor is something different, and you just pay. I think it was like $20 for the day, and you can do all the stuff in there.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's I think even even if we use arcade games as kind of the launching pad to the home console games, there's still. I mean, there are new games being produced for arcades, like even in America, Dave and Buster's is a thing, and Chuck E. Cheese is not necessarily a great example, but kids still love Chuck E. Cheese, and um, me and Ben went to Dave and Buster's pretty recently, and there's games I've never seen before. So there are still
Yeah.
companies, producing arcade type games, um, and I think there's still stuff that no one can afford necessarily to buy a arcade machine in which like your chair moves with the game. So I think there's still a lot of
Right,
cool
right.
things you can do in an
Yeah,
arcade
there
that you
are.
can't do at home. Um, so that's two, right? Two of the four.
It's 2. Yep, yep, yep. Then the next would be, and I'm grouping these two together,
Sure.
Mario Kart and Mario Party.
Okay. Okay. That's a fair
Mario
grouping.
ones.
Yep.
So I mean, Mario Kart is just, and Mario Party, they're both just fun family games. We've
Yeah.
laughed together as family in both of those. And I used to be able to beat my kids at both of those. In the beginning, I would let them win sometimes,
Sure. Sure.
and I had to fight to win, and now I can't win. So it's just crazy. So both of those, Mario Kart
Yeah.
Party.
I even remember we had a family Mario Kart tournament back in the day.
I was pretty good back then.
Yeah, yeah, that was a really fun. Like I still remember that to this day. It wasn't that long ago. Like I'm saying it like it
Yeah.
was like 15 years ago, but it's one of
It was
my
probably
like
10.
yeah, it may have been
Uh,
quite a few years ago. But it still is one of my favorite family memories. Because it was just a fun thing. Like most of the time, we'd get together for a holiday or a birthday, but we just got together to just do something fun, and I really
yeah,
enjoyed that.
it was. We did like a round robin kind of tournament.
Yeah, yeah. And then number 4.
And number 4, I guess, is you introduced me to Kirby.
Mm.
Got into the Kirby game.
Okay.
It's very similar to the Super Mario Galaxy because I had asked you way back when.
Yeah.
But I was sad because there wasn't another one. I'm still on some old, I don't have the latest and greatest of consoles and such.
Yeah.
So Kirby were good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my first experience with Kirby was for the Nintendo 64. And the thing I liked about that as a kid was, and I still like this to this day, I play any game that involves like multiple like potential outcomes. Like that game was, there's fire enemies and then there's ice enemy, like there's enemies for each element, and you
Right.
can suck them up, and then you have an ice attack if you suck up an ice enemy, but you could combine the ice enemy with a fire one, and it would make an attack that combined those two things together. And so as a kid, like when I'm playing that, I'm thinking these combinations are limitless. There's no end to like the combos you can make. Like, but it was so fun because I remember if you combined ice and electricity, Kirby would turn into a refrigerator and he would throw food at the enemies.
Seriously?
Yeah, yeah. It's like such a crazy idea. But like
It is.
as a kid, you're like, oh, the refrigerator's cold, but it needs electricity to run. Like, um, and so yeah, Kirby is a for sure a Nintendo staple. But I have yet to play a Kirby game that I haven't liked. So moving on, as you have said in a little while ago, you are a fan of games, and I even know like I had a hard time when I was putting the questions together. I wanted to talk about board games for a bit, and we still can. It's not off the table entirely because I know you and the family are board game fans.
Yep.
But something we have done together in the past is escape rooms, which is this puzzle based concept of you're in a room if you haven't done one before and you have to get out, and it's you solve a puzzle to get a clue, to solve a puzzle to get a key. It's this kind of series of events that lets you escape the room, and the heart of that is puzzles and puzzle solving. So have you ever played any puzzle type games, and if so, which ones did you like the most?
So interesting. I try to think back. Like I really like games that are wins, and I guess with escape rooms, the same thing. You solve a
Sure.
puzzle, you get a reward. I guess
Yeah.
as primitive as we are as humans. And the only game that I could think of that was really just puzzle based and play games as cousins, my daughters have evolved into playing them, is Professor Layton.
Okay.
DS. I don't. You
Yeah.
familiar with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess even before that were escape rooms that were virtual online on the computer kind of.
Yeah.
So real games. The Professor Layton. In that respect, that's the only thing I could come up with.
Sure.
I guess also like on my iPhone, the whole world of games there. Definitely play puzzle type games that are real pure puzzles. So logic puzzles. Oh, and I've got an app that just is a puzzle a day. So Sudoku and
Oh, cool.
like my math puzzles and things like that.
Yeah, I remember my mom has said before that you would do math for fun, and that's something that she could never understand.
Yes. But the funny thing is, I torture myself. I play Scrabble, and I've got
Oh.
a friend of mine in New Jersey that we just constantly play. It's cool, and I mean, he beats me 9 out of 10 games, but I keep getting myself back up and trying harder.
There you
and
go. There you go.
yeah, math is my thing, and words are not.
Yes, I can relate to
Love
that
the
too.
challenge.
It's funny. Shapes and 3D images is my thing. I'm told that's because I'm dyslexic. I don't know how true that is, but
Yeah.
no, I had asked that question. There was a game I played, and there's so for anyone who is in like my generation of gamers, they'll know the games called Portal. I don't know if you know the Portal games,
Oh,
but they are phenomenal games. They kind of they really like marked a change in gaming from like action adventure based to like, oh, we can have a successful like not super intense action heavy storyline game. Like we can the story is very suggested. It's not like pushed upon you. All that you really know is you are a person who is doing tests for some kind of company, and what you're testing is their portal gun. So you can put a portal on a wall, and then you put another portal on a different wall, and obviously those two connect. So the whole game is, how do you get across this room that has these crazy gaps or intricate like platforms or whatever, and all you have is this portal gun. So I think, like, the first map is like there's just this giant gap in which you can't jump over, and all you have to do is you shoot a portal to the other side of the map where the wall is, and then you shoot the wall behind you, and then you can just walk through the portal. And so
Well, that fascinates me.
Right,
I
exactly.
might have to look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get it for the computer. There's 1 and 2. And so really fun, really cool games, and that really marked, I think, a change in puzzle gaming. And now there's hundreds of puzzle games in which like the story is not entirely there. I think one that was really popular a while ago was called the Talos Principle. But very similar concept. There's portals involved and whatever, but that one is more story driven. If I remember correctly, I played it a while ago, but you're a robot who, I think the point of the testing is like it's testing artificial intelligence, and so throughout the game, like, you type on computers and someone responds to you, and you're kind of like typing back, but there's multiple endings based on how you respond, which is cool. They added story into the puzzle art of it. But yeah, I would look up Portal. It's very, very fun. Really, like, a very cool twist on the concept of puzzles. But that that was really good lead in to the next question. I'm interested, what, in your opinion, makes a good puzzle?
When I think about a puzzle, like even just thinking about the escape room, they tell you when you go in, you don't need to have knowledge. So if you're doing a Da Vinci room or something like that, you don't need to have knowledge of who Da Vinci was and this and that. You just need to think. I guess the whole think outside the box. You don't need to have that previous knowledge is definitely key for me. If there's anything that I got to know something ahead of time, I'm done. I don't know stuff. If I can figure it out, just logically try to put things together, whether it's even just plain old logic or the thinking out of the box, that definitely drives me.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's funny, they do say that every single time. They're like, you don't have to have knowledge of this topic, which is a great reminder, because I think the most recent one that we had done together was an easier room, but we were all really experienced escape room, like, puzzle doers. I don't know exactly what our title would be.
Yeah.
But we overthought all the puzzles.
Did.
And it's so funny because we, and I'm notorious for that. Like, I will always overthink solutions, and I think the most recent girlfriend I had, I told her to over communicate, because I will always over assume what you under communicate.
Nice.
So yeah, I always overthink things, and so yeah, it's a true concept of, like, going in, and it's not about what you know, it's about what you can piece together. Which I think is, especially in a video game context, like, you have to assume the person playing your game has, like, no information at all,
Yeah.
because you can't make a game. There's no way you can make a video game saying, okay, if you want to play this game, you have to have a in-depth knowledge of X concept, because at the creation of your game, you're alienating everyone that is not that person, which could be detrimental for the longevity of a game.
It's amazing how the games step you into it. So even if you don't understand whatever conceptual concepts that they're using
Yeah.
or things to figure out, step you in these easy levels, like you said with Portal,
Yeah.
the first level, and it just to give you that how you get going, and then harder and harder. It's amazing how games are designed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. The idea of, and there has to be some like balancing to that too, because you don't want. So a good example is I've played. I've used this example in the past with friends. The most recent DS Pokemon game. So much of the game to me felt like a tutorial. Like I played the game and I kept saying, "Okay, when do I get to play the game?"
Right. There is that balance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, of having like a good section of time that really pulls you into the game, but also at some point like saying, okay, shackles are off, like we're done telling you what to do, like it's on you now. Um, and yeah, there's a fair balance there of accomplishing that, because you don't want too much and you don't want not enough, because you'll frustrate people either way.
Yep. Yeah, and that's key when a game is really good, they've met that balance.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. That's so true.
It's
So
funny.
some Go ahead.
I was just gonna say there's some games I forget where we were going or why I was in your car and you were showing me a new game on the Switch and I got bored with it right away. Not I guess not necessarily bored. It
Sure.
were too many pieces to it for me, I guess. And
Yeah.
so for me and that may be my age now is you know what I don't need overcomplicated things where I've got 20 different things I can push or combinations and things I
Mm.
can do. And so, me, sometimes some of the games are too detailed.
No, I think that's huge, because I'm remembering, I don't remember where we were going, but it was actually Breath of the Wild, the newest Legend of Zelda game. And I remember you had said that, and it made me think, because so many people my age, and I say my age because those are the people that I talk to. So many people that I talk to about games, they will say Breath of the Wild is like one of their favorite Zelda games, like it's what they've always wanted in a Zelda game. And I don't disagree. Like I like the game a lot too. But and I don't think it's your age. I think it's uh a view of games, and I think it's something that a lot of people actually have, in which they don't need these huge open world experiences, and they don't need these, like you said, like thousands and thousands of choices. And the same people that love Portal probably might not like Breath of the Wild, because they're so opposite on spectrums of games. Because Portal's like, here are your two mechanics,
Oh, yep. Yeah, that's why
right.
caught my attention on that game.
Yeah, and like that's it. And what's cool too from a development standpoint is they have to make interesting, engaging puzzles out of two mechanics, whereas a game like Breath of the Wild pulls in a different audience, because they said, okay, we've created a game that has XYZ, whatever amount of mechanics, but you as the player get to combine them in different ways to make the game what you want it to be. Like I've seen people online, they've beaten that game in 3 minutes, because they just run right to the boss and they completely abuse the mechanics of the game to accomplish a victory. But that's someone's desired game type.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's just that's who you are as a gamer.
Yeah.
And I think from a developer standpoint, it's their job to make games for both people, not necessarily the same developers, but not everybody wants to play.
So I'm not old.
No, definitely not. And on that complete note of not being old, the next question which, which is something that I've been interested in asking a guest, and you are fortunately the first guest I've been able to ask. How did parenting change your personal gaming experience?
So, being a gamer, one of life, I'm sure,
Sure.
from games to any other kind of games, always been part of my life. Became part of my kids' lives too, and
Mm,
it just they were born to playing board games and shoots and ladders and everything there,
yeah.
and eventually having the fun of playing video games or sit and do together. And we've done things like the dance pad and
Yeah.
competitions there, and being very competitive, and my girls are somewhat competitive too, like those types of things. So it's start out where we're hold back on my Mario Kart driving because to let them catch up
Sure.
in the beginning, and then we get to the point where they start really picking up and seeing more than I am, and then it's competitive, and to now where I struggle to beat them at things. But we still have our competitions that go on at different times. Where like the Wii Fit board,
Yeah.
Wii Fit is kind of fun. Uh, it's just as simple as okay, the hula hoop thing where you're actually exercising.
Yeah.
One one of my girls beats my record, well then I need to get back on and to get my name back up there.
I love it. I love it.
It's just been fun, and we've played all the different video games together, but even board games and such. The I love board games where we work together and
Yeah.
try to do things. It's fun.
Yeah. That's such a great point. I think a lot of video games, this is so funny, I've never thought about it, but a lot of video games pit people against each other.
Yeah,
And it's not necessarily in a malice way, but Mario Party, the goal is to beat everybody else.
right.
Um, and I'm sure it exists. I'm sure someone is going to post a comment where they're like, "This game exists," but I don't think I've ever played a game where the goal is necessarily to specifically work together with someone else to accomplish XYZ goal. Um, so
So I
that's
guess I can
yeah.
think of doesn't you can have a player two in
Okay.
some of the Mario games, which I
Oh, okay.
always I love when they help me out because getting coins and things like that. But
Yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
I guess also when we used to do the dance pad, I was thinking some of the later games that went with the Wii and the dance pads that attached to it, you had two dance pads
Mm.
could work together. So as long as one of you hit the note or hit the arrow,
Oh, okay.
got credit for it as a pair, which was
Yeah, that's huge. Um,
uh,
that's cool. That's cool. That's good to know. And it's funny. The more I think about it, I'm pretty sure I've never played it because I haven't had the chance to in a multiplayer context. But I think Portal 2 has a two-player mode where you have to work together to solve the puzzles. I'm not totally sure what it like the level of difficulty and like how much of the game you can actually do two player because I have never played that part, but I know there's a two player aspect to it. Um, but I wonder too, like, is there more of a market for uh
operative.
cooperative? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because when I think of cooperative, I always think of like a lot of the games I'll play with my friends are like first person shooters where you're on the team together trying to beat the other team. But like
Right.
that's not necessarily the same as like working together to accomplish some kind of in our context a puzzle or a goal. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
there's definitely room for that. That's cool.
There
So,
is. And actually one's coming to mind and I only have vague details of, but there's it's that game where when you all get together and you have your phone, person's the host.
oh yeah. The like Jackbox
Yeah,
games.
Jackbox. Yeah, because
Yeah,
I thought
that's a
there was
great
one there
one.
about like diffusing a bomb where one person has some info and the other person has other info, and
Yes,
between the
yeah,
two of you, you have to diffuse the bomb, and that's cool. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
That's a
cooperative wins.
great that's a great example. There's a game. I think it may be in the Jackbox collection. but it's called Don't Stop Talking, I think. But it's that concept where one person has the manual to the bomb, and the other person has the bomb, like you said.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're like, how many lights does it have? It has 3 green and 2 blue, and then you have to like scroll to like the manual where it's lights and
Ah,
um, yeah, right. Okay, cool. I'm
yeah.
glad that we have thought of some games that have this
Yeah.
this idea, because the I don't think the playing together always has to be against each other. I think there should be more cooperative games. So I'm glad we're able to think of some. So in that same vein, as I've said before, a fair number of my listeners and people that I've interviewed in the past have been my age. And as much as I am nowhere close to this life milestone, some of my friends are close to having to their first child. I wonder, is there, like, what's one thing that you would say to someone about to have their first kid, and they're trying to think through how to raise them in this kind of techno world that we now live in?
It's funny because if I think through, I was thinking back, we're taking a trip to Florida. We were going to be driving.
Mm,
This is a long time ago, and I remember your mom saying, "Hey, our boys have DSs. Would you like to borrow them for the trip? It
yeah,
helps, pass the time." And at that point in my life, I thought, you know what? No, we don't need them to
yeah,
pay attention and license plates and do whatever. And
sure.
so there's definitely that balance. I'm sure there were times on the trip I'm thinking, yeah, I wish I had those DS. And since then, there have been times where, okay, the kids have their iPhones or DSs or whatever, and I'm thinking, yeah, I wish I'd take them away, because there's definitely a balance of where technology fits into with the kids. And really, it's no different than back when I was a kid and TV.
Mm,
These were the big thing, and remember every whatever night it was show that I wanted to watch, I couldn't miss it because recorded. So I had to make sure I was every generation
mm,
has more of this technology that lives. Yeah, how it brings up, I guess, questions on with this with the kids. It's good and what isn't, and how much is too much, and definitely tough. With my kids, they came about, and all the real gaming of stuff really started getting in, and phone definitely
mm.
think would do differently of how much they could use and getting them in their rooms and all sorts of things. But it's even crazier now than when my kids were young. Much more that's available.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, because each generation is the first generation to have that thing, you know? And so, people that are in my age group are like, oh, we're the first generation to, have, technologically filled cell phones, whatever. But, when our kids grow up, they're the first generation to have something XYZ. Um, and so, I think it's funny, and I think it's important as well to look back and say, okay, like, yes, that is a new experience, but at the same time, there's something in the past that equates to that, what you're experiencing right now. And the example that I think of is like even before technology. Okay, you have books, and I think someone at some point has said to somebody else, like, get your head out of that book. You're wasting your time. You're reading too much, whatever. I even think of Beauty and the Beast. Like, the whole first song of that Disney movie is the whole town making fun of Belle for reading too much.
Yeah.
And so there's always something that will take that place. I think technology is just the new thing, so people are a little scared, a little confused. But I think it's checks and balances with all things.
It is. It
Um,
is. Anything in everything in moderation.
right,
It's-
right.
Okay, not everything, 'cause,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
Good
good.
things in moderation.
Right, right. Well, it's funny. And my mom says that all the time. She says everything in moderation and then in its appropriate context.
Right.
So like the example that she's given me in the past is, morphine is a drug that doctors can prescribe that helps get people through many crazy intense situations, surgeries, XYZ, whatever. The same base drug that makes morphine makes other illegal drugs. So, that opium is used to produce a drug that, in its appropriate context and in moderation, can be good. It's when you take those things out of their appropriate context and out of moderation that they can become bad. So my last question for you, I guess, here is, you had mentioned it briefly with, parents kind of handing their kids iPads. I'm wondering, is there an age where like kids should not have technology, or do you think it's just something that like parents need to be more mindful of, or is it just kind of let it go and see what happens?
Yeah, so I think kids at any age can have. I think a 2-year-old can use an iPad and enjoy it, and it's again back to that in moderation. They're given that, especially restaurants. You see kids just sitting there playing on the iPad, and I think, okay, when my kids were young, and even nowadays, when we played dots, get
Yeah,
those little placemats and some crowns, and we ask for them, and we played the dots and the mazes and entertain ourselves and talk time. And
yeah,
so I think there's definitely times where, you know what, yeah, you need to have your child chill for a little bit, on an iPad, entertain them, type of thing.
yeah,
There's got to be that balance of, you can't do that all the time. To make most of times together that you can, and yeah, it's that balance.
yeah,
There,
yeah,
there are often times when I think back that, yeah, my kids sat in front of the TV and the same thing. It's, I need a break. Yeah,
yeah,
you're gonna sit in front of the TV. You can watch this 2-hour show, and
yeah. No, it's so true. And I think you bring up a good point too. And it's it's so easy to like to see a parent give a child an iPad and just assume the worst and be like, oh,
right,
they're just they don't want to deal with their kids, they're doing that. But I think to kind of to tie it all together and to wrap it all up, I think if we like the experience at a restaurant that like you're talking about, and the ones that I remember as well, are like the talking time while playing those games. So, I think of Cracker Barrel, where they have all the little like table games and little puzzles and stuff. And you have those moments where you play that, and then you're like, oh, I got 3 pegs left. And then, your mom, your brother, whoever plays it, and they get 2 pegs left. And it's, it now becomes this thing where you're interacting with each other. So I don't think technology is bad. I think let's just focus and try to get games on this technology that are interacting one to the other. Because there's plenty of games where you can hand an iPad to a kid and they can zone out and do their own thing. But like as a hopeful future father, I hope to have dots on my iPad or whatever whatever the
yeah.
proverbial dots is. But take that time and say, okay, yeah, we're going to use the iPad because it's the convenient thing to use, but we're still going to turn it into this like family talk time where we're spending time together and playing things together.
That's even with video games,
Yeah,
or shooting hoops, or sitting next to each other playing video games. It's your time together, and
yeah,
it's not better than the other. You're child and what they enjoy, and there's a Christian author that hosts this series about today's teens, and he always talks about meeting children where they are and they like to do and getting in their world. And if their world is video games, and you sit next to them in video games. So the technology, it's here. So we can enjoy it and use it, and it has its place. And
yeah, for sure. Well, hey, Aunt Kathy, thank you so much for your time.
This is fun. I've got things I need to go look for, like Portal and something or other. And
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would say look for Portal, and I can help you find it if you need help later on. But I think you'd really like it. I think it's a game that you'd really enjoy. But it's been great to get your perspective on some things and to have the chance just to talk games.